Hello everyone, I'm Bable Jonathan and this is the 6 p.m. primetime newscast on Equinox Television, live from our headquarters in Cameroon's economic capital. Dwelling our top stories in this edition of the news: despite the arrest and detention of leaders of the Cameroon Renaissance Movement, the CRM political party remains determined more than ever before to put an end to electoral hold-up, the crisis in the northwest and southwest regions of the country, and what has been qualified as unlawful exploitation of the country's resources by a clique of individuals. The party of Professor Maurice Kamto is preparing for an unprecedented move to compel authorities to liberate the leaders and, of course, the other militants who have been detained in different incarceration centers in the nation's political capital, Yaoundé. And as the Anglophone crisis deepens, further insecurities on the rise in some localities in the littoral and west regions of the country, notably those close to the borders with the crisis hit southwest and northwest regions of the country. The Cameroon Renaissance Movement (CRM) political party continues mounting pressure on the Yaoundé administration to liberate the national president of that political party, Professor Maurice Kamto, other leaders and allies of the party, as well as militants who have been detained in the nation's political capital, Yaoundé, in connection to the protest move organized in some major towns of the country on the 26th of January 2019, and also some destructions that occurred in some embassies of the country, notably in France and Germany. The party is preparing an unprecedented move to compel leaders of the Yaoundé administration to liberate the detained leaders and militants. In the meantime, Professor Maurice Kamto has maintained that, contrary to the statement of government spokesperson and Minister of Communication René Emmanuel Sadi, they are political prisoners detained for political reasons, best known to the Yaoundé administration. Details in this report by Fomi Armstrong Sanda.
A letter codenamed the Declaration of Allies of Change in Cameroon, Maurice Kamto, Christian Pendai Koka, Aben Zonga, Paul-Eric Kinge and Gaston Abe alias Vassero began by lashing out on the declarations of Minister René Emmanuel Sadi, Cameroon's Minister of Communication and Government spokesperson. René Emmanuel Sadi, recently reacting to the United States Assistant Secretary of State in charge of African Affairs, said Maurice Kamto and co-detainees were not political prisoners but held for crimes committed against the laws in Cameroon. Maurice Kamto and co in their letter said the minister lied.
We want everyone to get it clear that we and 160 other militants detained in detention centers across Cameroon are political prisoners.
Maurice Kamto and co said in their capacity as political leaders who participated in the October 7, 2018 presidential election demanded a recount of the votes for each polling post following irregularities noticed with result sheets and its failure to correspond with others in most cases. The allies also explained their confusion with the silence exercised by some partners of Cameroon, like the African Union.
How can one explain the embarrassing silence of the African Union at a time when we are expecting that the African problems should be solved by Africans? It is difficult to think that the African Union is not aware of what is happening in Cameroon, considering the numerous initiatives we took to inform them. How can we explain the silence of several historic partners in our country, notably France, which claims to have Cameroon at heart?
Maurice Kamto and other detainees of the CRM political party again called for a total and huge mobilization of the international community over what they qualify as the violation of human rights in Cameroon.
And militants of the Cameroon Renaissance Movement (CRM) political party, everything being equal, are planning to hit the streets in some major towns of the country on the 17th of March 2019, the same day the Undersecretary of State, the American Undersecretary of State in charge of African Affairs, Tibor Nagy, will be visiting Cameroon. It should be recalled that he, in an earlier outing on Radio France International, he called for the liberation of Professor Maurice Kamto and the other political leaders, and this call was followed by by another statement from another top world official, notably the representative of the European Union, Federica Mogherini, who called for the liberation of Professor Maurice Kamto as well. And the government reacted and simply indicated that they were arrested within the ambits of the law for having violated the laws of the land. This is contained in a statement signed by the Minister of Communication, government spokesperson Rene Emmanuel Sadi. And the crisis has continued deepening in the two Anglophone regions of the country for close to 3 years now. Gun battles, burning down of houses, villages, and of course institutions continue in those two regions of the country, as well as abductions and hundreds of thousands of persons who have been sent out of their houses and are now IDPs or internally displaced persons in Littoral, West, and other parts of the country, while hundreds of thousands of refugees in neighboring Nigeria. And one of the institutions suffering as a result of the effects of the Anglophone crisis is the University of Bamenda, added to other problems that are plaguing that higher institution, notably the limited number of lecturers, as well as some technical challenges faced by that institution in the heart of the northwest region of the country. And the Commonwealth is now coming in to assist boost the functioning capacity of that higher institution of learning. This is one of the issues that was on the table during the celebration of the Commonwealth Day in that higher institution of learning in the northwest region of the country. It should be noted that the University of Bamenda is a member of the network of Commonwealth universities, and it is within this context that the Commonwealth Day was being celebrated in the University of Bamenda. And of course, we equally have information indicating that the Commonwealth is also helping that university as well as other universities to fight some ills that are plaguing academic milieus, or better still, university milieus. Now take a listen to an official of the University of Bamenda who spoke to a Northwest correspondent, Stella.
The University of Bamenda is part of the Association of Commonwealth Universities, and through that association there are so many opportunities open to staff, to students, and even to the university as a whole, and sometimes even to the immediate community. We need to take advantage of some of those things. We need to be more proactive. I suppose find out what some of those things are all about. There are scholarships for students, there are research grants for staff, and it's possible also for exchanges to take place, with teacher exchanges and things like that, especially for a university like Bamenda, which suffers as far as the number of teaching staff is concerned. So we can take advantage of something like that. So the Commonwealth has grown over the years, and I think more and more everybody is realizing how important it is to live as a community. That what I do affects the next person, and affects the next person, and affects the next person. So there's a spiral, and climate change is not a hoax. Child trafficking is a common phenomenon nowadays. Even child pornography, it's rampant. Human rights, yes, obviously, that is all part of human rights. So there are things that all of us need as a community to be more aware of, and we need to be more open about discussing some of these issues. If we can discuss them, then we can.
That was Professor Roslyn Jua, Deputy Vice Chancellor in charge of research, cooperation and relations with the business world at the University of Bamenda, speaking there. And I told you earlier in the headlines that insecurity is on the rise in some localities in the littoral and west regions of the country, notably localities that are close to the borders with the crisis-hit southwest and northwest regions of the country. And this is part of the impact of the Anglophone crisis that is spilling over into other parts of the country. In the report coming up next, Senaze takes us to the locality of Njombe. It is, of course, one of the localities suffering the impact of the deepening Anglophone crisis.
Nous sommes tous interpellés par le vaste chantier de consolidation de la paix.
Rising insecurity in Njombe-Penja in the Mongo division of the littoral region as a result of the armed conflict in neighboring southwest region is now expected to be a thing of the past in the coming days. This as the divisional officer, Pumienjoya Aziz, the local administration, security heads and the population expressed their determination to flush out the syndrome that has raised panic and put many in grief due to frequent attacks and gun battles in the community.
Que nous soyons vigilants. Parce que les gens toquent à notre porte, vous savez, la localité de Njombe-Penja est frontalière aux zones sensibles.
In a security meeting that grouped local government authorities, military officials, traditional authorities and quarter heads, including the population, the divisional officer instructed them to be more vigilant, denounce deviant behaviors and report strangers with suspicious moves.
Les attaques sont déjà au niveau de Penamboko, les attaques sont au niveau de Boubou et plus récemment encore à Mombo. C'est pour ça que le sous-préfet nous demande d'être vigilants et de dénoncer toute personne étrangère.
He encouraged them to collaborate for consolidation of peace and harmony in Njombe-Penja and in synergy develop the municipality.
Occasion pour nous d'inviter toutes ces communautés à participer aux côtés des autorités administratives et des forces de maintien de l'ordre.
A call heartily embraced by the peace seekers who promise not to fold their arms, seal their mouths and suffer.
On aura beaucoup de propositions pour qu'ensemble nous puissions voir comment nous pouvons éliminer cette situation que nous sommes en train de vivre dans notre pays.
These inhabitants pledged to ensure the boundary of Njombe-Penja is not trespassed by the Amazonian fighters.
Puis nous faisons tout pour que, n'est-ce pas, cette vigilance-là et que ces gens-là n'entrent pas, n'arrivent au niveau de notre localité.
Traditional authorities, quarter heads, thus see the need to merge ideas for a peaceful, united and developed Njombe-Penja.
And the Anglophone crisis is worsening the problem of rising youth unemployment in the Republic of Cameroon. Figures of the Cameroon Employers Organization, SHICAM, indicate that over 6,000 jobs have been destroyed by the Anglophone crisis as a result of the impact on companies like the Cameroon Development Corporation, PAMOL, and many others that have been practically crumbled by the socio-political and security crisis in those two regions of the country. And the Cameroon government is yet to come out clear on this question of unemployment in the country. We spoke to the Minister of Employment and Vocational Training, who was here in the economic capital Douala today. And for me, Armstrong Sander compiled this report.
President Paul Biya on the 10th of February this year announced 5,000 jobs to be created in 2019, and more than a month later, the country's Minister of Employment and Vocational Training is still addressing job creation in future tenses.
The government will stand by whoever is in need of the training, because the government is multiplying the vocational training center. We have already some few settled here and there, but it has to spread all over the nation to enable whoever is jobless and would like to be trained, to have a skill, to give them the opportunity to do it.
Speaking during the International Maritime Job Fair in Douala, Minister Issa Chiroma Bakari accepted that the training offered by higher educational institutions is poor enough that young Cameroonians graduate without skills and hence fall short of the expectations of the job market.
You have many Cameroonians who are graduate, but unfortunately for not having a skill, they do not answer positively to the labor market. Aware of this problem, the government has already taken and will be taking all measures to help those who are jobless today to understand that by cursing, by blaming the government, this is not the right way to solve the problem.
But young poly-trained Cameroonians still see the state responsible for their mischief, as most of them are graduates from state universities.
Most of the maritime companies here prefer to employ other people because they believe, other nationals, because they believe they are well trained than us Cameroonians. They don't trust the source of our degrees, even though they are from national state universities.
Jobs in the maritime sector, which could help reduce the burden of unemployment in Cameroon, are not easy to find.
After school in the maritime sector, you need to have a training first before you have a job. The training, it's a little bit expensive. Some of us can't afford it, and that is a problem in the job market.
And also another difficulty is in the fact that most of the people in the domain right now are the aged, especially when you're talking about the part of the douanement. It's full of mostly aged people who don't want the youth to come in. They feel like it's competition.
Added to the high rates of unemployment and its related causes is the security situation that has destroyed thousands of jobs in the northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon. Statistics from GICAM say over 6,000 jobs have been lost as a result of the Anglophone crisis that has placed Cameroon's second largest employer, the CDC, in a limbo.
Several kilometers of roads across Cameroon's economic capital are in an advanced state of dilapidation. Those roads have been in that state for several years, and construction projects that were launched since 2014 are yet to yield concrete fruits, notably concerning the improvement of the state of roads across the country's economic capital. And the government delegate to the Douala City Council, Dr. Fritz Tonne, has reassured the population, commuters in general, that those roads will soon be rehabilitated completely. Sumanjikan Gabriel has more.
First rains fell in Douala, Cameroon's economic capital. The Nyala Chateau d'Eau, Japomahai neighborhoods were immersed in water. It was a veritable nightmare for the road users and those who live in this area. For some days now, this stretch of road is presenting a different picture due to the resumption of work that was put to a halt since 2014 at an execution rate of 60%. But as it stands, the military engineering department in charge of road works is taking everything from the start. The head of the military engineering department, Colonel Malal Kami, explains.
C'est vrai que nous devons encore finaliser quelques travaux d'assainissement.
It is true that we are supposed to finish some work, particularly with the gutters. We abandoned the Japoma stretch at an execution rate of 60%, but it wasn't our fault.
Quand nous étions rendus à 60%, taux d'exécution de 60%, malheureusement, l'arrêt est assez prolongé pour des raisons qui n'étaient pas due à notre volonté.
On the opposite side of the Nyala Chateau, Nyala Rai, moving up to Ndokoti, road users and inhabitants of this area will have to be patient again. This construction site that falls under the emergency plan of the Douala City Council has since been on hold because of the lack of payment to the contractors. According to Dr. Fritz Tonne, the Douala City Council boss, we are going to work in collaboration with the engineering unit of the military to help get a temporary solution. Amongst all of the projects launched in 2014, just the roads moving up to the north end of Douala is almost done, even though some final touches are to be done. With the hope that most of the projects will be completed, the government delegate of the Douala City Council says that will help to reduce traffic congestion in town. Another construction site that gives sleepless nights to its inhabitants is that at Peka 14, with a valley that is life-threatening, which has caused many of its inhabitants to flee away from the area. As Dr. Fritz Tonne visited the different construction sites, the government delegate of the Douala City Council is also planning to wage a war against the haphazard construction of houses in the city of Douala.
Coming up, Innocent Aze takes a look at the impacts of the increase in beer prices, notably in the locality of Zeka, in the central region of the country.
He can no longer relax in a beer parlor because of the recent increase of beer price. He has switched to the consumption of palm wine, which is quantitative and cheaper.
Non, aujourd'hui la bière qui coûte à 800 francs, nous préférons boire nos matango. Le drop est à 100 francs, que nous le préférons.
Most of them in Seka, in the Nyong-Ankele division of the central region, have done so for similar reason, but consume different locally produced wine, whose demand has greatly increased with the activity on a boom.
Avant, je vendais le vin du matin.
This palm wine vendor smiles because she now generates enough income as compared to the past.
Ça dépend de la livraison.
This increase in the demand of the locally made drinks like palm wine, corn drink, commonly referred to as sha, bilibili, nofia, to mention but a few, has instigated many inhabitants to invest in the business, to woo the high number of tasty youths and the old. Being more economical when compared to beer, these consumers say they can spend the entire day at these drinking spots.
Mon seul repos maintenant, c'est le vin. Je peux rester là jusqu'à 19h.
Others say the different locally made drinks boost energy.
The whole day I can walk without thinking to find food to eat.
Other inhabitants, on their part, condemn the consumption of these drinks and say products used to produce them are questionable.
C'est des produits qui ne sont pas dans la ligne normale d'une consommation.
Some of these locally made drinks had been banned by governments for their health toxicity and catastrophes they had caused some years back.
Now out of the country, at least 8 children are feared dead, and of course many more are feared trapped after a building containing a school collapsed in the Nigerian city of Lagos. The school, which was on the top floor of the 3-story building in Itafaji on Lagos Island, reportedly had more than 100 pupils, and rescue soldiers are searching through piles of broken concrete and twisted metals for survivors. The cause of the collapse is yet to be clearly established, and the collapsed building was a residential block containing a number of apartments as well as the school. And emergency teams have pulled several injured children from the rubble, but many worried parents have arrived at the scene, while others have gone to local hospitals to look for their children. At least 8 of the pupils have died in the incident. Now we take you to Algeria, where critics say the president of that country, Abdel Fattah, or rather Abdelaziz Bouteflika, has relinquished his quest for power, but has held back or maintains his hands on power simply because he has denied his intentions to run again for a 5th term in office, but has postponed the elections in that country, and he stopped running for election or a 5th term in office after pressure mounted by the population. Euronews.
After weeks of protests, the Algerian people have had something to celebrate. Thousands filled the streets in the capital after President Abdelaziz Bouteflika bowed to unprecedented public protests and promised not to seek a 5th term after 20 years in power.
هذه أول نقطة دارها الشعب الجزائري نحو بوتفليقة ولكن النظام لازم كامل يروح هذا السيستم لازم كامل يروح.
Franchement, aujourd'hui pour nous en Algérie c'est une très bonne nouvelle et ce qu'on s'attendait c'est vraiment arrivé quoi.
كنا عايشين في حبس حبيبي الحمد لله يا أخو ما نش حابسين في المية يا أخو.
Earlier, it had been a frail-looking President Bouteflika who, in a rare public appearance, had dropped his bid for a fifth term. He also postponed April's elections and promised a cabinet reshuffle and constitutional changes. But so far, there's been no suggestion that he will step down before any rescheduled poll. For the past few weeks, while 82-year-old Bouteflika was receiving medical treatment in Switzerland, Algeria has seen huge demonstrations. What began as anger against his bid for a fifth term expanded into opposition to the entire regime. Then his fortunes changed for the worse on his return. On Monday, 1,000 judges refused to oversee the planned general election, and then the military's chief of staff said the army and the people had a united vision of the future, indicating the armed forces were sympathetic to the protesters. For some, this has all been seen as a strong win, especially after the resignation of the country's prime minister. But for others, it's more of a partial victory until there's a firm timetable for Bouteflika's departure. Evelyn Laverick, Euronews.
And in sports, construction works at the Japoma 50,000 capacity stadium and sports complex are gradually progressing towards the finishing line. And the Minister of Public Contracts, Ibrahim Talba Mala, was visiting that sports amenity today to take stock of the level of advancement of works at that sports complex here in Cameroon's economic capital. Douala, now take a listen to the Minister.
This project is a huge project. Technically, I can say that there is quality here. And we can say that this project is about to be ended. We just emphasize on the delay and some details and some modification which happens after the construction of this huge complex, and this one is to be done, and I am sure that with all the partners, public and private public, they are involved to achieve this huge project.
That's it for the first part of this newscast. Coming up next is Talking Point.